Welcome back. Let's start to add this new feature that is to create multiple face detections. Now, how should we start about this? The first thing I want to do is just move things around. Let's have our front end over here, so I'm not constantly going back and forth here. And the very, very first thing is, well, we're dependent on this API, this Clarifai API. So I can go into the documentation and see what kind of response we get, or I can just maybe log out whatever the backend does when we hit detect and Clarifai sends us a response. So let's have a look. If I go to the backend, to the image, I see that the Clarifai response is here in the data. So let's just console.log this data and see what kind of information we get. I'll save. And like I said, there's probably an easier way of me just going to the documentation to see what they respond, but I think this way is more general, so I think it would be more beneficial to look at through here. So let's go back, hit detect, make sure that our assumption's correct and that we return something. All right, looks like we get a response. Description okay, we get an ID, created at, model, input, data. All right, data might be something that we're interested in. So let's go into that. Let's go with, actually, before we even do that, let's see, since we're just returning this plain data, let's see what the front end is doing with this information. So in the front end, if we take a look at the, where was it? The calculate face location. We see that we receive some data here. I wonder if this might be it. So let's go to calculate face location, find it, where we actually call this. And yeah, we see that there's a response which comes from here, where we make the image URL call. All right, so this, I think, might be the response from Clarifai. Let's see what the front end returns. I'm going to just, within here, say console.log, and just grab the response. Going to save, and I have to sign in because we just refreshed, so gmail.com, hey, sign in, and let's copy and paste. Oh, I gotta get the image again. Let's copy and paste, detect, and open up the console. All right, so this is the response. We get outputs with an ID. Let's see, we get data, input. Input, is it data? There's a lot of things that we can probably go to their documentation and figure out what we need. Let's see, we get 0. Okay, so this is a lot of information. Let's see how we actually use it on the front end. So on the front end, if I go to display face box, which is what we're using, or calculate face location, which is what we're using the data for, I go up here and I see that I'm getting the data, outputs, data regions, region info, bounding box. So let's copy that. Or let's traverse that ourselves. So data, outputs, data, regions. So let's go to data, outputs. So data, outputs, 0, data, regions. And, interesting. We have an array here of 2, but if we go back to the code, it looks like regions, we're just using 1. And we're getting the region info and the bounding box to calculate face location. So if I go here, I see that, okay, this is the bounding box, top row, left column, bottom row, right column. And on the second one, all right, we have the same thing. Okay, that's interesting. What if we just have an image with just one person? Let's click that. Again, we always want to test our assumptions. So I'm going to copy this and That's a URL, so I'm going to hit detect. All right, we get a second response here. Again, let's test that our assumption's right. So if I go output 0, data, regions, there's only one region because there's only one face. All right, so without coding anything, we can assume that maybe regions might be what gives us the face information. Again, this was without even looking at the documents or the API reference by Clarifai. Let's test that. Let's have perhaps a loop instead of just returning one thing. Or even better, let's change this data region 1. Let's save here. And if I go back, I got to sign in again. Sign in and use the image that we had over here. Remember last time we got this face detected, but not this one. So again, going back here, we changed that one line. We said that we want the second face detection. Oh, look at that. His face is now detected and not hers, just by changing that number in the array. So right away, before we've written any line of code, we know where we can fix it by just testing it out. So it looks like we need to loop over this, and instead of returning an object, perhaps we can return an array of objects. And when we display the face, remember we have the display face box, we should return perhaps multiple objects of where the faces might be. Let's start to do that. Now, what usually you want to do is create a new branch as you start to work on your feature. Now that you have a big idea of where you want to start testing out your code, and you start your branch and start working on it and make small gradual commits. But for now, I'm just going to skip that process because we want to focus on just creating this new feature. So the first thing we want to do is let's map over this. Instead of having the first array item, because I know this is an array now, I'm going to say map. And I know that it's going to return some face detection information. So I'm going to say face, and let's start a new line here so we can see it better. Close the brackets. All right, and we have this information from each one of the faces. So if I have two faces, I'll have two items in the array. Okay, so we have this. Now, because we're looping over this and we want to return an object each time, we can actually just move all this inside over here. And the face region info.boundingBox is now what this expects. Let's assign a variable to this that is the Clarifai face that we're using here to measure where we should display that blue box where the faces are. So I'm going to say const Clarifai face equals this, and change the above variable to Clarifai faces. But actually, I see that since we want to return these Clarifai faces, which is going to be an array of these objects, I might as well just take this out and say return. So this calculate face location, we might want to name it to calculate faces or face locations, and change this everywhere else that we see it. So let's say, where else do we have this? So just these two places, I'm going to change this to face locations. I'm going to save. Now, the next part is the display face box. So we're returning an array now of these objects. If we go to display face box, that is a really funny variable name. Where is it? Display face box. We see that we're setting, so we're set stating the box to equal box. All right, but this is expecting an object, and we're returning an array now. So let's change that. We have boxes now, and this should be boxes. And just to keep the names standard, we should change our state name to boxes. And up here, where we have initial state, change this to boxes. Again, we're now returning an array instead of an object. So let's change this into an array. All right, let me save, see if we get any errors. Nothing yet. Where are we using these boxes? We want to make sure that these names are updated as well. So let's go look for any mention of boxes in here. We have the bounding box, which is from Clarifai. That's fine. Display face. Perhaps we can change the name to boxes. Oop, let me close that. Display face boxes. And use it over here and update that as well. Where else do we mention the word box? We see in the render, we have this.state box, but again, we have multiple boxes now. So I'm going to say boxes. And let's save just to make sure that we're not making errors. And we see that line 138, box is not defined. If I go to 138, I see that face recognition component that received this box information now needs to actually receive boxes. And perhaps we should rename its props to boxes as well. So let's save. Everything is working, but we know right away that since we're passing boxes as props to face recognition, we have to go into this component. And you see, I'm taking it step by step, seeing where these variables lead me. I go to the face recognition. And okay, right away, I see I should change this to boxes. And I also want to change this to boxes, 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 and boxes. Well, let's save and see what happens here. It's always good to check our work and see where we are. So I'm going to say hey@gmail.com. Hey, let's sign in. And again, use our favorite couple image. Going to paste. Scroll down. Nothing's displayed now. We just broke the app. But let's go back here. Let's see if we're getting any errors in the network tab. So I'm going to, again, click. And if we make this a little bit bigger, we see that everything is working. So we might be doing something off here. And another tool that I like to use is perhaps the developer tools, the React developer tools, which again is a Chrome plugin that you can install. And if I, let's say, look for the face recognition component, I see that this face recognition component has, it has the bounding box over here that there's nothing in there. That makes sense. But if we go into the over here and look at the boxes, we see that, it's receiving a props of 2 arrays. Well, that was fun. My storage got full while recording, but I'm back at it. All right, so we have the array right now that has 2 boxes, and it looks like it's returning what we want. So let's go back to our app and notice here that, so we're returning an array here that has an index of 0 and 1, but in the bounding box, we're doing boxes.toProw, boxes, right column, which don't exist because this isn't an object anymore, it's an array. All right, so there's a nice little fix that we can do here. Again, we can just create a JavaScript expression by wrapping it in curly brackets. Nope, that's not what we want to do. Curly brackets. And because boxes is now an array, I can just say boxes.map, our favorite function, mapping, that on each iteration has a box that, if you remember, gives us those properties, the div with boxes.row or box.row and other dimensions that we need. So let's just return this. And I'm going to keep this on one line, even though it's kind of long. So that way we can just say return and then the element that we want. And because this is now box, we can just go back to using box, which has these properties of bottom row, right column, left column. And let's save here. Okay, let's give it a try here. And again, we're just going step by step, just logically talking to ourselves and figuring out what we need to do. Let's go back. We have to sign in again. Let's go, hey, click sign in. And I'm going to close this for now. Let's grab the image again. Go back here, paste it. Woo! Look at that. 2 images. Let's make sure that we don't get any errors. If we go to the console, each child in an array or iterator should have a unique key prop. And this is a very common warning in React, and that's an easy one to fix. Anytime you're mapping over elements in React, you want to add a key prop that is unique. The key for now is just going to be the box.top row. Probably could be something better, but at least we know that it's going to be unique for now. Let's go back. Again, because we have to constantly sign in, we might want to just change the route, the state of the route for development, so we don't have to do this over and over. But if we go back, detect, 2 faces, no errors. If we go to the network, looks like everything is working. Perfect. I think we've implemented the feature. And now what we might want to do is actually test different things and try to break this and see if we get any errors. Perhaps maybe write some tests for this, make snapshot testing. And there we go. We have ourselves a new feature implemented. Make sure we create that new branch, make a pull request, test out different things, try and break this so that this feature is actually working. We haven't made any mistakes. And we got our first feature in the SmartBrain app. Hopefully this gives you a good idea how the app works, because we're going to be using it in later sections to do some really, really fun things. So for now, I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.